It's Thursday. It's not quite 3 p.m., but that means one thing. It's happy hour with Little Nessie, Dave, and Ron. Cheers to you, sir. Happy Thursday.
Cheers to everybody.
All
And
right,
to the people
Ron and
I.
special shout out. He may not be watching yet. No, I'll wait. Special shout out to someone. But happy Thursday. We've been getting a ton of rain here on the East Coast. What about you, Ron?
No rain. No
rain. Yeah,
no, just like 100 every day.
It's been raining every day for 5-6 days or so, and it's still got quite a lot more to go. But the good news is my grass is looking good. So there's the upside.
Yeah, that's great.
Ron and I go live every Thursday. We talk about mortgage. We talk about real estate. We talk about tech. This week I'm talking about the UFC, and we talk for usually about an hour. We try to hit about 3 main topics that are a little bit more beefy with charts and graphs and that kind of thing. And then we usually hit about 3 or 4 rapid fire topics that we try to spend 3 minutes on each, but we never really seem to hit that goal. So we're going to chat for about an hour. If you're a loan officer, a real estate agent, a leader in the mortgage industry or real estate, some of these topics might be helpful for you. Ron is one of the most studied men that I know, and always has unique insights and data that he just seems to pull out of his you-know-what. So let's get to this week's topic. So for the first one, for my From the Gut, which is a section that I just ramble for about anywhere between 5 to 10 minutes. I'm talking about, you've probably seen this in the headlines this week, but entertainment became the language. So I'm going to talk about that. There'll be a marketing branding tie-in with it. And then we're going to get to our 3 main topics. Ron, take it from here.
And Dave, I think we actually have extra topics this week, so we're going to go a little bit faster than what you were saying.
Yeah, I think we've allotted 6 minutes for each main topic.
So this is great. We're going to talk about not necessarily just the new Vantage score, but we're going to more talk about the impact of having lenders choose which score to use. And that should be really interesting. Affordability, we talk about this all the time. David, we're going to talk about some good new, press about how to solve affordability. Hopefully that'll be really useful information because we need more advocates.
And next.
This is interesting. Just adult children are staying at home longer. They're launching a little later. We're going to talk about that and share a bunch of really interesting data by not quite ethnicity, by marriage type, by gender, and by income level.
And last one.
Yeah, this is another fascinating, dads are behaving differently now than they did 20 years ago, even 10 years ago, how they're allocating their time, what tasks they're doing. And we have a bunch of data on that. That's going to be a really good topic.
I'm not sure if I want to get McKenna to weigh in on that topic or not. We'll see.
Half these topics are her. We need the young person's perspectives. McKenna, get fired up, crack open your banquet beer, get ready.
Yeah, that one could go sideways. We'll see. All right, well, let's get into this week's From the Gut. Oh, before we do that, sorry, McKenna, special shout out to Mike Stowers. He was texting Ron about 5 or 10 minutes before we went live, which we try to go live at 3 p.m., but it was like 3:05, 3:10, and he was hounding Ron. He was like, when are you guys going live? So special shout out to Mike Stowers. So you want to say hi or some curse words to your brother?
No, not at all. Just good to see our audience growing. Thanks, Mike. You've doubled it, so we appreciate it.
All right, let's get to this week's From the Gut. All right. So, like I said, this week, going to talk about something, already kind of teased it, but honestly still kind of seems fake to me, even though it's real. I'm pretty sure that I saw some posts about this months ago. Um, and I 100% thought it was fake, but apparently not. You've probably seen it on headlines this week. The White House is preparing to host a UFC fight as part of the 250th celebration birthday, the country's birthday. And again, when I first saw people talking about this months ago, I thought it was just internet nonsense. And maybe the images probably were generated by AI months ago, but now you're actually seeing images. And honestly, I can't stop thinking about what this represents culturally, because I'm looking at it from the perspective that this isn't really about the UFC, and it's not really about politics. It's about the fact that entertainment has become the language that culture speaks now. Years ago, we separated things. Information was information, entertainment was entertainment, and politics was politics. Those worlds occasionally kind of overlap, but they still felt distinct. Now, podcasters influence elections. Influencers shape buying, or can shape buying behavior. News clips get edited like movie trailers these days. And now there's going to be this UFC fight on the White House lawn. That's not just spectacle, that's a signal, because whether people realize it or not, the way humans consume information has fundamentally changed. I think this is where a lot of older generations who are still practicing mortgage, loan officer, real estate, that's especially in industries like ours, that's where that older generation may struggle to understand what's happening. Not hating on the older generation, but for decades, marketing was mostly informational. You ran ads, you sent mailers, you explained rates, and you built trust slowly over time. And that still matters. But now information alone usually isn't enough to hold attention anymore. Not because people got dumber, but because people are overwhelmed. Everyone is drowning in information. That's tough to get out. Everyone's drowning in information now. So what cuts through isn't usually more information, it's storytelling, it's personality, emotion, perspective, humor. In other words, entertainment. And I think that word makes a lot of professionals uncomfortable, because when they hear entertainment, they immediately think of or picture TikTok dances or people acting ridiculous online. But that's not what I mean. Entertainment doesn't mean that you suddenly have to become a clown. It means the delivery of information changed. People don't just want data anymore. Maybe Ron, he's maybe the exception, but people are looking for more than just data. But they want context, they want energy, they want humanity and connection. That's why podcasts exploded. That's why YouTube became more influential than traditional media for younger generations, especially. That's why someone explaining financial advice conversationally online often gets more engagement than a polished corporate commercial with $1 million budget. The information didn't disappear. It just got wrapped in personality. Entertainment became the delivery system. And honestly, I think that's what the UFC at the White House thing symbolizes. Not that America is collapsing, not that politics became a joke, although you could argue that point, but that institutions themselves are adapting to the way modern humans consume culture, information. Culture moved, attention spans changed, and media changed, communication styles changed, and the people who still communicate like it's 1998 or even 2005, they're slowly becoming invisible. And I think a lot of talented professionals hide behind, I'm not good at social media, when really what they're struggling with is adapting to a completely different communication environment than the one that they built their career on. The game changed, and whether we like it or not, the people who understand how to educate and engage, how to inform and hold attention, how to communicate without sounding like a robot. Those people have a massive advantage now, not because they're louder, not because they're necessarily more intelligent, but because they learned how modern attention actually works. And honestly, I think that's why this whole UFC White House thing stuck with me, because as ridiculous as it sounds, it perfectly represents where culture already moved. Entertainment isn't replacing information anymore. It became the delivery system for it. Those are my thoughts, Ron.
David, well done, and I agree. The thing I'm curious about is, do you think that's a change, a cultural move for the good, or a cultural move for the bad? Is society evolving or decaying?
I think there's plenty of data out there that suggests that it's decaying.
All right, that's a non-committed answer, but I agree with that. You should.
Yeah. What is it? I saw a post just the other day that said this newest generation, whatever we're on now, but this newest generation, whether it be 15 to 21 year olds, I don't know. And I didn't research it myself, but it said it's the first generation in history that's not smarter than the previous generation.
Yeah, that's definitely true. IQs are dropping, and they think because of social media and because of the access to information, people aren't thinking as much anymore. But
Right.
how many elections are we away from an acting president actually performing on UFC?
I realistically, I don't think I ever see that happening.
I'm not going to underestimate the power of the clown car.
You know, that would be something else. That would get more views than the Ronda Rousey Gina Carano fight, which I think hit 19 million at its peak viewership. I think it hit 19 million.
I could see it now with like a fancy cape sponsored by Bitcoin. You know.
Oh my gosh. I mean, it is a thing. All these once retired professionals are coming out of retirement, like Mike Tyson and others, to fight these young influencers. So, if the money's right, then maybe we'll see.
Honestly, I'd fight some of these influencers for free if I just want to get arrested.
All right. Let's move to our first topic. We'll try and hit 6 minutes, but we're talking about vantage scoring, credit
Yeah, I
scores.
love this, Dave. The topic is, understandably, and I think positively, the government's trying to drive more choice in credit choices so that there's competition. So FICO doesn't have a monopoly, and they've done this by now allowing Vantage Score. So it's really the first time that lenders have a choice on, what kind of credit report they're going to run. Now, just in the background, know that credit reports are changing because they're going more to trend analysis, and stronger predictive signals than in the past. In the past, it was a snapshot in time. Now it's an analysis over the most recent period, which is great. But here's the rub, and here's some things that people don't understand. Because a lender now can choose from A or B, and not every lender has that choice right now because the Vantage is still mostly in beta. Now, giant lenders are the ones beta testing it. But because we have a choice between A and B, the first thing is the scores aren't the same. Like if you put me through the credit scoring model, I might score 760 with Vantage, but 720 with FICO 10 point, I think 10.1 or 10T. I think it's 10T, FICO 10T. So it could be as much as a 40-point difference. So as a lender that has the option of looking at both, they can shop between one or the other. And they can shop, so they can start to manipulate, who qualifies and who doesn't by what credit model they're using. And right now, the whole AUS systems aren't set up for that type of comparison or analysis. Like they're not it's going to be credit score driven. And so there's a potential that somebody who has a 580 on FICO 10T might have a 620 in Vantage, and so you direct them to 620, but truly they're a 580. And so one of the things that analysts are worried about is that we're going to game the system and get a lower quality borrower who doesn't have the appropriate risk adjustments attached to it. So that's the first problem. Now that's I'm not so worried about that. The system will work itself out, and we'll figure that out. But the second issue is real, and it's I was surprised by what the second issue is. Here's the second issue. Let's say I'm ABC Mortgage and I only have access to FICO 10T. That's what I use for my tri-merge. Well, I do the best I can for my client. I close them the day after close, right? My competitors doing a query on what credit model I used on this closed loan. If they see that I did FICO 10T, they immediately reach out to that client and go, look, the lender that helped you get this loan uses a credit scoring model that comes in low every time. Just based on the credit scoring model you used, we think we can actually refinance you today, one day after close today, and we think we can lower your rate by a quarter point. Because the way we're gonna do a little analysis. We think we can improve your rate, and they can refinance them the next day. So now, what's happening now is the secondary market is really, or the servicing is really scared about this, because now they have no idea how to predict how long the duration of the servicing relationship, because of this new risk. They have no idea what's going to happen, and it's giving them the jitters, which is immediately going to lower SRP, especially in the marginal borrowers between credit buckets, right? The ones that get, they're gonna be able to go above 720 or above 680 or above 620, whatever happens to be, right? That they're going to be really skittish about paying a lot of SRP for those. Especially, they're going to start asking you, what credit model did you use? And that's going to affect the value of your servicing, which in the end is going to drive up prices. Now, I want to say again one more time, David, I'm for competition. I'm actually for this. I hope we get more competition. It's just interesting, the unforeseen, wrinkles that are going to happen because of it. And you just need a bunch of really bright people figuring this out. And that's why we have great people in the mortgage space. What are your thoughts?
It seems to me that, when you're choosing a lender, a bank, a whoever, you kind of would expect a level of ob- ob- objectively, what's the right way to say that? Objectiveness, and not subjectiveness. When you go to a bank or you're shopping for a house, a car, something like that, you would think there would be an objective standpoint, but this seems like it's going to be way more subjective. And my fear is that, the mortgage industry already kind of has a lack of trust from a consumer's perspective. And is this going to put that at risk as well? Going to make consumers less trusting in our industry. Objectivity. Thank
Yeah,
you, McKenna.
it's an interesting thought there, David, because what you're saying is, look, you want to think the variable is credit, like all credit should be universal or global, right?
Right. Yeah.
And that's one of the things you're going to see, I think, soon. They're going to work this out where I think this is going to happen in the next 5 years, if not sooner, maybe the next 3 years, where the consumer is going to be able to run their own credit report, a mortgage credit report, and it's going to be transferable to whatever lender they want to take it to. Right. And that's going to allow for shopping. Because right now, if a credit report, let's say the full reporting cycle takes about $250, lenders don't want to run it if they're not going to close a loan. And the government's going to try to protect the consumer by not making them have to pay it to shop at every single lender. So they're going to change the rules where the consumer is going to drive ordering their own mortgage credit report. And that's going to be one of the documents they deliver to the lender. And so this is going to kind of solve it for them. They'll be able to pick their credit report and do it. So I think that's coming sooner than later. But the other thing is, David, what you described about, hey, the consumer thinks they should get the exact same experience every lender. I can tell you that's already not true, because AUS systems vary by lender, right? They put overlays in.
Right.
Some, by the way, and overlays aren't a bad thing. Sometimes you put overlays in because that is what your bar is to prove ability to repay, right? Where some lenders might be comfortable pushing it all the way to the edge, and what that's called is on the layered risk scale, right? Some lenders throw caution in the wind and they don't care about layered risk, and other lenders go, hey, we care about layered risk because we want this loan to perform, meaning we don't want the consumer to lose a house, right? And so sometimes when you look at these overlays, they're actually protecting the consumer against the consumer's wishes, but in their best interest. But lenders just want to make money and go, I don't care. I'm just going to go run past that stop signal. And so we've already had it, right? Who gets approved at Wells Fargo is totally different than who gets approved across country or who gets approved at Homeowners Financial. They have complete, even though they're the same AUS systems, how they're engineered, the results are completely different. And it's not just by 1 degree, it's by like 10, 15 degrees. So this is kind of the same vein.
Yeah. Um, you might have seen me trying not to laugh there about 2 minutes ago.
I did
McKenna's
see that.
cursing at McKenna's cursing at me on our internal chat. So I
Why are we
first started.
going wrong?
No,
Uh,
I've
but
if if you were at if you were with us at the beginning of the show, I was talking about the White House thing and how uh, the newest generation is dumber for the first time in history is dumber than their predecessors. And and as I'm trying to think of the word, or McKenna told me Gen Z is the first generation to be dumber, and then I'm struggling with the right phrasing of the word objectivity, and she said, "Who's dumb now, bitch?" So she's
you know what? You're foreshadowing our last topic, so stop it.
there you go.
Let's move
Let's
on,
move
though. We
on.
got to keep moving. We're going to catch
Affordability.
up, McKenna. I love this. David, you and I have been hammering that affordability is largely a byproduct of big houses, big lots, a lot of home features, added bedrooms, added bathrooms, all those upgrades. And if we just got rid of all those upgrades, homes would be affordable. Not like the one in this picture, though, by the way, but homes would be more affordable. If we just went back to a house 30 years ago, homes would be more affordable. And I've mentioned it a ton of times. If you bought a house in the 1960s, you probably had a pretty damn small lot. House might have been 1,000, 1,200 square feet. You had like shag carpet, linoleum, tile. You had very primitive house, but you were able to afford it and get in on housing. Today, a starter home is $1 million. It has 5 bedrooms, it has 4 bathrooms. You have marble countertops. You got travertine throughout the house. You got a pool in the backyard, and you got $200,000 in landscaping. That doesn't work. And so I was really happy to see 3 different news outlets this week speaking to, hey, look, the affordability issue is really not. It's our we created this, and I'll tell you, there was a couple of really good articles. Housing Wire picked up, I think, a guest opinion writer, Scott Finner, and he's with land planning. But he had this article, and the title was, "We've met one enemy of housing affordability, and it's us." And he goes and he has all this great data. And by the way, McKenna, I apologize. He has great charts. I probably should have pointed out to you. But he has great charts about how the size of houses and the size of lots have changed, and how that's really probably the biggest impact on affordability more than anything. Because more expensive prices have been tracking mostly with inflation or wage inflation. So it's really relative, over time. I know some people would argue with me, but affordability has largely been a byproduct of too big of houses, too big of lots. Now, I was really happy to see the NAREP come out with a position paper, and AEI, the American Enterprise Institute, come out with a position paper saying we want to solve affordability. Government has to start loosening some of the zoning and permitting restrictions on homes. Let us build smaller lots. Let us build smaller homes. Let us build with fewer amenities. Let the first-time home buyer in on the bottom rung lower the bottom rung. And David, the most important thing about lowering the bottom rung, you can lower the bottom rung without affecting home values on the upper rungs. That's something that President Trump says he doesn't want to see happen. He doesn't want to solve affordability by dropping values. Well, the way you do that then is create a new lower rung. It's just such a great solution. So from my perspective, David, I'll turn over to you and maybe McKenna too, because I like to see McKenna's viewpoint on what's the appropriate size house for your first house. But the thing I'd say, I'm just happy to start seeing this more in the mainstream, press, and then seeing that different organizations now out there lobbying for this, because we need that. That's how we're going to solve affordability, in my opinion. What's your thought on this?
I think the rate of expectations has changed faster than income. And I think I'll go back to it. I think social media has a lot to do with that. TV shows have a lot to do with that, and I think we're in a state of keeping up with the Joneses more than we ever have been. I think that's comes from a lot of, influencers, the celebrity culture and all of that stuff. So, yeah, I think it's of course we know that there's a housing shortage and all of that, or there's a housing shortage of smaller homes, but I think expectations that people have now, they want a home that a house like I've been a homeowner for 26 years or so. I think there's an expectation with a lot of kids now because of social media and that kind of stuff that they want a house that their parents had, but their parents have been homeowners for 25 years, 30 years, 40 years. So, yeah, those are my thoughts.
Yeah, and definitely the cancer of comparison is really the evil behind all this, or the impediment behind all this. But that being
Mhm.
said, I still think that if the option was a less desirable house or no house, even the most self-conscious person would rather have the more affordable house. McKenna, this is where you got to jump in. What do you think? When you go to buy your first house, does it have to be a McMansion, or do you want to just live in a little like mini home? What's your view?
I don't ever want to live in a McMansion. That seems like so much to manage. I would much rather live in a small home. I think
Well, if
small
you have a
homes are
McMansion, you can
great.
probably afford a house cleaner.
That's true.
Yeah.
Still.
See, you're wishing the wrong thing. You go, I wish I make enough money so I can have a McMansion and an army of people to take care of it.
Okay, but if I have all that money, then I would much rather spend it on much more fun things than having a McMansion.
What would that be?
Mm,
Vacations or I don't know.
travel.
Travel, that's pretty much it.
Travel.
Travel.
You could get
Travel.
that Lamborghini you've always wanted.
Oh yeah, dream car. Would love that so much.
Yeah, that doesn't seem like you. So you're saying for your perspective, but hold on. When you go to, when you either get married or you get tired of your parents, which we're going to talk about this topic in just a few topics, and you go to launch, would you accept smaller home than your parents if that's what got you to get into ownership?
100%.
100%. And do you
Say
know people that wouldn't?
I don't think I personally know anybody that wouldn't. I would
Yeah.
much rather have like a 2, 3 bedroom house at the like beginning stages of home ownership.
Yeah, yeah, you don't need the perfect manicured lawn like your dad's house. You can, you can live in a mini home. But it's a really good point, and the thing too, McKenna, I think people your age get not only disenfranchised and discouraged when there's not even an option. Like, there's no viable option for them. Like, that's what's grossly unfair. I don't think it's unfair you can't afford the mansion as your first house. I think it's grossly unfair that society has somehow contrived to prevent you from stepping on that first rung. And I think that's 100% wrong. And we have to fix that. And hopefully the government will address it, because they're the ones largely now, are propping it up.
Ron, your
Ron,
brother asked a question. Hold on.
that's what I was
Uh
about to say.
okay. When does a small home, like a tiny home, or just become a different product closer to a mobile home or car? Does it matter if it's tiny if it's a tiny home in San Diego or Arkansas?
I don't think it matters. I think you're going to see growth into manufactured homes. That's one of the things the government's really stepping into right now, being able to do more because manufactured homes are starting to have good quality stick-built homes. You're also seeing a move into allowing more mobile type homes, like every type. It's not one or the other. It's all. It's like do it all, right? And then let the water settle where it will to its own level, right? But don't prevent water that can't settle up the mountain not travel, right? Give them an option. And you know what? If you give them an option, there's always a market for it. I can go, buy a hut. I promise you, somebody's going to want to buy it from me someday, and it's probably going to appreciate. And that's the bottom rung. Does that answer that? You think, McKenna?
I think so,
Yeah,
because I
I,
was
I've got a quick
parents.
question, then we should probably move on. But has the price of land increased at the same rate as houses?
Well, the question is what's driving home prices? Just inflation, cost of land, cost of inputs, or is it other? How much of it is a bigger home? I don't have that exact statistic, David, but I would bet at least half the cost of a starter home now is because of increased lot size, increased house size, increased amenities, and not just inflation. And I would just remind you, the inflation part is why home prices, the cost increased, so did wages. Wages could probably keep up with the inflated cost of homes if there wasn't also the additional cost of them being bigger, grander, type of thing. And I think, by the way, one of these articles actually has that answer, and I'm sorry I don't have it at my fingertips.
We did have 2 slides on that. I don't think we showed them, but we're out of time on that one. We did? Oh, that's right. That's right. All right, let's move
Hey,
on to our
hey,
next.
producer
Yes.
McKenna, McKenna, in your notes, you're telling me words not to use. You can
Don't
go ahead and
repeat.
explain
Don't
it.
repeat.
All right, let's go to the next topic. Oh, David, what is this picture of? So this is your family at the kitchen
This is,
table. Kelly has
yep.
wine, or no, maybe you have
Y-
wine. Kelly has
I think we both have
probably
wine.
her preferred cocktail, and oh no, that's McKenna has probably drinking A&W root beer, and Kelly's drinking preferred cocktail. Oh, she has wine. What's this great cup of? Okay, give us a setting here. What the hell's happening? Your face looks blue, like Mr. Bill. What's going on
Yes,
here?
this is me, my wife, and my daughter, and I believe my son is taking the photos. So this is a game where you have cards with a phrase on it, and it's always random, but there's a contraption that you put in your mouth, and it stretches your mouth as wide as can be, and it looks like you're at the dentist. It's a fairly popular game, so most people have probably heard of it or seen it or have it, and you just have to say this phrase to your teammate and they have to guess what it is, but it makes you sound it makes it extremely difficult to pronounce words properly. There's a famous clip, and if you haven't seen it, it's Chris Pratt on the Ellen DeGeneres show, where he tries to read what's on the card, but it says on the card it says, "I want to bump you," like fist bump. And when he says it, he doesn't realize what it's about to sound like, but it sounds like he says something very inappropriate. I'm gonna you. So it's a very fun game, but it points to our topic of incubation style, and that's talking about kids staying at home.
David, I'm going to try to avoid the 800 Ellen DeGeneres jokes that I'd like to make right about now, especially because somehow this all started to make sense. It wasn't making sense when you said everybody's familiar with this, but once you said Ellen DeGeneres is the champion of it, and I'm looking at your face, now it makes total sense. Okay, that being said, that has nothing to do with our topic. It's just such a hot
Yeah.
picture. Okay, you guys want me to just give you some data to start with? I love this. 1 in 5 adults aged 25 to 34 live with their parents. 1 in 5, about 20% of 25 to 34-year-olds live with their parents. That is up from just 12% in 2000. So in 2000, it was 12%. Today, it's 20%. And just to give you an idea, 9 million young adults live at home today, which is really, really interesting. Now, we have data here, which you may or may not be able to see. It kind of breaks it down by different demographics. Producer McKenna? Perfect. So the first one is, prevalence of living with parents by different age groups. It kind of makes the older you get in that 25 to 34 cohort, the less likely you are to live with your parents. So somebody that's 25, 31% of 25-year-olds live with their parents, about 28% of 26-year-olds and so forth. That kind of makes sense. That doesn't surprise us. Next, McKenna. Perfect. Here we go. If you're married, of course, you don't want to live with your parents. That makes total sense. The 6.1% of married people live with their parents. Probably their parents have McMansions, I'm just guessing, or farms. Gender, this is interesting. Men are more likely to live with their parents as an adult child than female, as an adult, child than females. Significantly, 5% is a significant. That is a significant difference. And then, of course, income. The more you make, the less likely you live with your parents. But there's still 6% of young kids that make $100,000 or more a year. Those are all those coders that are being replaced by AI. They live at home, and so that's really interesting. Dave, I'm not even going to go straight to you. Let's go to McKenna. McKenna, I'm really interested in your viewpoint since your landlord's the other person on the show.
I mean, so a decent amount of my friends are married, but I would say the ones that are unmarried all live with their parents. All of my friends. Um, Maybe 1 to 2 outliers, but most of my friends my age or around my age, so like I would say 21 to 27 live with their parents.
Yeah, and how come?
My guess is probably cost of living, and so being able to stay at home. Although I do know a few friends that do pay rent at their parents' houses, it's still significantly lower than what it would be. No, 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 no.
David, you're not going to charge McKenna rent because we just have to pay her more. So stop it.
That's true.
David, before I turn it over to you, I want to just give something that popped in my mind as perspective. So, McKenna, when I was a kid, I went and got my driver's license the day I turned 16, like the day, and I got a car the next day because I wanted my independence. There's something like half the kids today turn 16 and don't care about a driver's license, because their life is about convenience. And the reason I bring this up, my guess is a lot of, adult kids live at home, not only because of affordability, but because of convenience. What's your take on that? And then David, I want to hear your take.
I didn't get my license until I was 23.
I don't want to mention you just became part of the driving class, but you did live out of the country for like 4 years. So I'm
Yes.
not putting that against you, by the way.
In my defense, some of that was to do with COVID, and some of that was to do with moving, and then also some of that was to do with living out of the country where there was cheap public transportation, so I didn't have to worry about it. But yes, I still
Yeah.
did not get my license until I was 23. But I would also agree it's very convenient. I would say it's very convenient to live with my parents. I love being able to have home cooked meals pretty much every night from my mom. It's great. I love it. But it is also great because I'm able to stay at home and save literally as much money as I possibly can, which is that's my goal for while I'm here. I'm just going to save, save, save.
That's great. All right, David, you got to walk, not on a fine line, but keep it safe there, brother.
I won't speak to the situation with McKenna. I'll leave that alone. We love having McKenna with us.
I would. I get it.
It makes me think about the marketing incubation period for loan officers, in the fact that a lot of first-time buyers now are older than what they were 20 years ago. And what's the average age of a first-time home buyer?
As you know, that's heavily under dispute, but the data that I probably trust is closer to 32, 33.
Yeah. So if you think about it, someone who's never owned a home before that is now, let's say, just say in the early 30s compared to when I bought a house when I was 21, they're a lot more knowledgeable, probably. They're a lot more, they've been watching, whether it be social media. And so I think the marketing strategy that a loan officer or a real estate agent should adopt for first-time home buyers they should look at it from a perspective of this is like a 5-year incubation strategy from a marketing standpoint, from a lead standpoint, and so on. So, yeah.
And that is the point and why we have the topic. It's because the incubation period has greatly expanded. It's no longer a 30, 60, 90-day incubation, or even on the outskirts of the year. It might be a 10-year incubation. And the other thing is your approach strategies need to change. You need to really get into financial literacy, get into homebuyer seminars, get into generational wealth seminars. If you want to help kids move out of the house, talk to their parents about how they're going to transfer wealth and how they can use real estate to do that because they're sitting on a ton of equity. You just got to pivot your strategies, and you have to accept. And by the way, it is a marketing problem too, David. How do you stay relevant for 10 years without breaking your back on the labor that it takes? Like, how can you automate it, stay relevant, stay in relationship, add value, but manage that if it's a 10-year incubation? And this is one of the bigger challenges. And and by the way, this is some of the automated platforms like Rocket are solving. But we have to be able to solve it as a frontline officer without overtaxing our resources.
Yeah. I just want to one more shout out to your brother Mike. He's hitting up our comments. So Mike, if you're still watching, if you're still on here, go to littlenessie.com/store, pick out your favorite t-shirt. Just send it in the comments which t-shirt you want and what size, and maybe direct message me or I'll get your address from Ron. So free t-shirt coming your way.
And Mike, if you keep commenting, you probably could be a guest host next week. All right, let's move on to the next topic. I think we covered that one.
Yeah, we're talking about dads again.
This is so interesting, and I love this picture. But how dads are performing have totally changed. And I'll get right to the to the punchline here. Dads are spending much more time with their children. And what studies, I mean, a lot more time, not a little bit, a lot more time than their parents or their grandparents. And they're doing it because they enjoy it. But what's really interesting, Dave, when you look at the data, even though dads are spending a lot more time with their children, they take all the light lifting things. They like drive them to Little League, they coach them, they do playtime with them. That's what the dads do. The moms, by the way, interestingly enough, moms aren't spending any less time with kids. They're still spending the same amount of time, and they still get all the heavy lifting stuff. They got all the rough stuff, So the dad does kind of the fun stuff. He's doing a lot more of it. The mom does kind of the heavy lifting and is doing the same amount. And the argument is that the reason why this is happening is that there's three kind of opinions on this. First, that it's a much more complicated world, and kids need more parental support in this complicated world. The second thing is, of course, more moms are working, and so there's a bit of a void there where the kids need a little extra parental attention from the other parent. And the third thing is, which is a very interesting theory, David, is that there's so many affluent people today that affluency now is the freedom to spend time with your kid. And they did this study of they did a study of some sort of primitive tribe, like current primitive tribe. There's two of them, right? The ones that were hunters. I don't know where this was, in like some South Pacific island. The hunter tribes, the father spent no time with the kids. On the gatherers, the farm grower tribes, the father spent a ton of time with kids. And so your wealth also has a impact. Now, David, let's do some. I'm going to give you some statistics here. So this is on dads. So we have a chart. The father spent no time with the kids. Ooh, what was that?
That was weird. That was Ghost Ron. I heard a repeat line. McKenna, what happened there?
I know. Hey, producer McKenna.
I was checking on the live status, and I guess y'all heard the audio from my computer.
Yeah, that's what happened. That's funny.
All right, can we get a visual? Producer McKenna? Oh, not that one. We already have that one. All right. This is not the topic. Producer McKenna?
That was last.
That was last topic. Then I don't think we have any visuals on this one.
That's last week's topic, which I'm happy to rail against again.
We may just have to skip over it.
Yeah.
Hold on. We had some great charts too, McKenna. I think we had 2 or 3. So here's the deal. So fathers are spending 38. So one thing, they're spending 38% more of their time. And this is 1965 to 1985 compared to 2022 to 2024. So first, fathers are spending 38% more of their time at home, working from home. They're spending 26% more time playing with their kids, 38% more time caring for their kids, 10% more time driving their kids around, 29% more time doing housework, 32% more time getting sleep. That's great. But they're spending 22% less time eating, 11% less time grooming, and 30% less time reading or watching TV. And so, you know where the real savings are? They're spending 82% less time working at the office than the generation from 1965 to 1985. So that's the raw data. I know it's hard to hear data. Sorry, everybody. Now, there was a couple of interesting things too. The percentage of sole father earner households has totally changed. This was a chart that was in our prep, but the percentage of sole father households has gone from 50% now down to 20%. The percentage of single mother earners has gone from negligible to significant, which is really interesting. And so I think that's enough data. David, we can just get your impression, and then producer McKenna, if you want to, might as well jump in since the tack's gone off the rails. let's get your viewpoint.
My only viewpoint is that, or thought is that 96% of statistics are made up on the spot, and I just made that one up. But how do they freaking track? I question when I hear statistics and data like men are spending 27% more time grooming, women are spending 17% more time in front of the mirror, whatever it is. I'm like, how do you accurately friggin' come up with those numbers? I question it a little bit.
You know how they ride the subway?
What's it? Is that literally how they do it? And they,
No,
I
no.
don't know.
If you've been on a subway, you know people are spending less time grooming. McKenna, what's your thoughts?
So, how much total time on average are fathers spending with their kids a day?
That's a really good question. If we had the chart, I'd be able to tell you. But you know what it is? It they don't- you know what? There's an aggregate. I don't want to take the time. Uh, it's by the way, today's millennial 30 something dads typically spend more than 80 minutes a day changing diapers, reading and playing with their children, driving them to soccer practice, and going over homework,
80 minutes?
which compares to like 30 minutes that their grandfathers did.
Oof.
And David, by the way, this is an academic study, and it was actually written by, of course, we all know Derek Thompson, very much acclaimed, economist.
Well,
So what does it tell?
Michael,
What's the bigger point here?
Well, hold on, I want to get McKenna's,
I
young
was
person view.
gonna say that Michael Stowers did say that both my sons have kids and are so intentional about this, 100% enjoy it too,
Yeah.
which is
You,
great.
you know what's well, one other data point, and then David, you go. What's the point? But the other data point is that dads that spend more time with their kids are far happier than dads that don't. Like you're like, oh, that's so good. But the counterpoint, dads that spend more time with their kids, especially their first kids, are less healthy. So they're
Wait,
happier but less healthy.
really? I'm
Yes.
trying to figure out the logic on that. Why?
Yeah. They I don't know. They try to explain it, but it's just an interesting point. And
Well, I
David, the
mean, maybe
point
the
is,
more time you spend with kids, then the less time you have for other things. For example, going to the gym or exercise and stuff like that. I don't know. Or
yeah, and the
playing with your
point is,
kids. It is exercise.
like, why are we talking about it other than it's kind of humorous? Is
Right.
because, how somebody behaves out in the wild or in their real life, their environment completely impacts the type of house that's right for them, the type of financing that's right for them, and understanding where they come from is what's most important. And so it didn't used to be you talk to a couple, hey, how important is it that dad, you get to spend more time with the kid? And how important is it that you guys get to spend more time as a family unit in their house? And dad, how important is it that you get to work from home now? And how important are these things, right? They all contribute on, should you stretch to buy a house in price, or should you minimize it so you don't put pressure on your income? Should you stretch, get a bigger house because you guys are going to spend more time there? Like it has a direct impact on it, David, but it's a really good question.
Yeah, I think we all know that from COVID that home offices became way more desirable than they used to be, right? But I wonder if the layout of homes it hit should change because of this. I don't know. Obviously, the more kids you have, the more square footage is helpful, but does this change kind of how builders think about how they want to the construction and layout of their homes at all?
David, you know what's so interesting? If you're a builder, loan officer, or a builder sales rep, you get to see the trend of what builders do. It's amazing how much houses change over time. So
Yeah.
yes, 100%. So not only have you seen the advent of the home office, but you know what you've also seen a lot of? The
Mm.
advent of like a homeschooling place. A lot of homes
Mm.
now have like a little like homeschool area, even whether they're homeschooled or not, but like a designated area for kids to do their homework. Like there's a computer terminal. It's amazing how much it's evolved so quickly. Builders are super sensitive to what the future is. I've always been impressed. And I used to love when I have to go, used to have to go to communities, every week because I'd see all these new innovations. Like, wow, that's something I got to pay attention to that. That's pretty sharp.
Yeah.
Let's go,
I
David. Let's
remember
go.
one last thought on that. When I first moved to America, I had never heard of homeschooling before. Thought it was weird. And 30 years ago, I think the majority of people who homeschool did it for religious reasons. I always thought it was weird, but just through a string of events, we ended up homeschooling our kids. I shouldn't say we. My wife Kelly homeschooled her kids. No, I played a small part, but
You were the seed
and
that made it happen, David.
I think of how popular, especially since COVID, it has become now, and how that plays into builders' psyches and other people's psyches. So that makes 100% sense for me.
That's good. Let's go. Let's keep going. Good point.
Do it. Rapid fire.
Hey, David, this is super quick. We don't have to talk about this at all. Just good news. The House passed the housing affordability bill. That's good. They did it overwhelmingly of 396 to 13 vote. The best news is they took out the build to rent provisions where the builders had to, disgorge the property in 7 years, which is the dumbest thing I've ever heard in my whole life. They also fixed some technical things with loan limits for investor property for Jenny. It's all good news. Just we railed on this a few shows back to back to back. I just wanted to close the loop. Now we thought it was going to be a slam dunk in the Senate because the House had negotiated with the Senate and with the White House that all got in alignment that they could accept this. But somehow the bills hit the skids. The rumors, at least what I read in Bloomberg, is that the White House is the one that's kind of delaying this. So we'll have to see, even though they have done some recent statements in the press saying they got to pass this, but we'll see what happens. But it's still good news.
I think we need to catch up on time. I won't offer
Let's
any
keep
other
going.
insights. So let's move on to our next rapid fire. This one's interesting and crazy.
Yeah, this is really interesting, David. This is more of a aha than anything else. I came across a Bloomberg article about how New York is now going to tax people that buy houses in cash for houses over $1 million. I'm like, what the hell is that? That's like blatant and just horrible. Like, how can they do that? And so I actually went to Gemini. I said, Gemini, can you explain to me what the heck New York is doing? And it turns out that New York actually has the highest transaction cost in the country. And how they
Not
do this
California,
transaction cost, not property
right?
tax, highest transaction cost. It's like 1.8% recording fee if you have to record a mortgage. It's a sliding scale. It's 1.8 if it's less than like $600,000. It's like 2% if it's more. It's something crazy like that, right? And so what happened is that people are paying cash to avoid that tax. And so what New York, who has like a $3 billion deficit, said, okay, we're going to close this loophole. All these people paying cash aren't paying our recording fee of $40,000, right? Is McKenna still getting off right here? She's what are you guys laughing about? All right, so this recording fee, they're like, we're going to tax people that pay cash, and they're like, well, we can't tax poor people that pay cash because they saved their whole life to buy a house. Let's just tax rich people that pay cash. And so they came up with this tax for people over buying cash for $1 million, and they expected to raise $160 million a year. But what an interesting thing! Who even knew all that existed? What are your thoughts, David?
How do you think this will change kind of the mortgage industry and maybe some products that mortgage companies have?
Yeah, you know what happens? 100%. This is super easy to understand. Somebody buys a house for 1,200,000. You know what happens? They're going to get a $300,000 mortgage or a $201,000 mortgage to avoid that tax. Because remember, the tax is based on
Yeah,
the amount of the mortgage, right? So let's get enough mortgage to avoid the cash tax and to pay the smallest amount of recording tax. That's how it's going to
right.
change immediately. And so this won't work the way that the New York State thinks it's going to work. As always,
But
unintended consequences, because people are free to figure out how to work around these things.
right. So that's just a workaround. It's not really going to change anything on the mortgage company side. It's just going to change the strategies of the buyers, right?
Yeah, but you're going to get more people wanting to get mortgages. That's great.
Yeah, true. Yeah.
Yeah,
How many
so
are
that's good
there?
news.
How many in New York or maybe just in general are buying homes for cash? I think I've heard this statistic before. I don't remember it, but I'm pretty sure I remember being surprised when I heard the number.
Well, historically, the number of all cash buyers across the country is 20%,
Okay.
and the peak at 27%. In New York, I don't remember the number, and I don't have the article in front of me. It's really high because people are avoiding the recording tax, and so it's artificially high.
Gotcha. Let's move on.
Well, let's keep going.
Making our way through.
Yeah, I like this topic, and David, I'm going to keep myself on a short leash because I can go on a rant about 12 different ways on this topic. But let's go to the one chart, and then I'll get a mini rant going. All right, so as you guys can see, the price of cocoa, let's just call that chocolate, the main ingredient chocolate, tripled in 2024, just skyrocketed. It had to do with, I think, the weather problems and cocoa growing areas, and then they had a little bit of blight, blah, blah, blah. Stayed elevated through 2025. But since then, the price has collapsed. It's dropped 70% in the last year. Now, the cost of inputs was going up, candy companies raised their price of their goods, right? So let's just call, we're going to say Hershey. Hershey raised the price of their candy bars. The other thing that Hershey did is that they they went to inferior ingredients, so much so that in 2025 they can no longer call a Hershey bar a chocolate bar. They had to call it a candy bar because by rule you have to have like 70% cocoa in your chocolate to be considered chocolate, and they didn't meet that threshold. And the founder, the original founder of Hershey's was actually Reese's. It was Reese's. We have Reese's Pieces and Reese's candy bars. Reese's sold to Hershey, who then built the empire. But the son, and I can't quite remember his name, and I so apologize. And if he, by any chance he's listening, which is not completely out of control, but if he were listening, I think it's Paul Reese's. I'm sorry, I don't remember. Um, he calls himself the brand ambassador for Hershey's. He had a viral post on LinkedIn that said, "This candy is garbage. This Hershey, like his dad founded the company. He goes, I want to eat this crap. It's all like buttercream and it's no chocolate. They went to inferior ingredients. This isn't a chocolate bar. This sucks." And that thing went like viral, right? So much so that 3 days after his post, Hershey's announced they're going back to making a chocolate bar. you know, so you go, well, what the hell does that have to do with anything? The input prices have dropped 70%, and Hershey's recently had a statement saying, we're not lowering our prices. They're like, we lost our butts for 2 years. We saddled all the additional costs without moving the cost to our consumers, ignoring the fact that they raised their prices and cut the quality of the product. But we were burdened with those costs, and now we're going to recoup that goodwill we did for our customers for the foreseeable future by not lowering our prices so that we can recoup those profits. Right? One, it's total false, total baloney, total lying. Right? But other than me ranting about this, David, there's a couple things that are important. I almost thought this could have been like from the gut for you. The reason why we have such a society where we don't trust anything or anyone, because everybody lies to us. Everybody lies to us all the time. That's the society, right? And so consumers are just getting disenfranchised and mad and angry, and this is just an example of another company lying. The truth is the the elasticity of pricing is people have got used to paying the price, and so they're going to keep charging the price until they quit buying it. As soon as they quit paying the higher price, as soon as they quit buying it, Hershey will drop the price immediately, like an anchor, right? That's the first thing. The second thing is, I rail against the whole vibe, the consumer vibe, which is really getting in the way of them making great choices. Well, part of the vibe is that prices are high. It's not inflation because the price of a candy bar hasn't risen in the last year. The problem is it doubled over the last 3 years, and people are pissed off about high prices. People incorrectly assign it to inflation. Inflation is what happens year over year. High prices or sticky prices are different, but those sticky prices are pissing people off, and they don't know what they can afford anymore. And it's certainly getting in the way of them being able to buy a house. I'll tell you, David, I am shocked at how much everything costs. I was at the store yesterday. A head of lettuce is $3 for a crappy piece of lettuce. What in the world is happening? $3 for a crappy piece of lettuce. There's no end of it. How much prices? I'm trying to take my son golfing at a local golf place. It's summer rates right now. Usually summer rates in Scottsdale, they go, if you just close the door behind you, we'll let you golf for free. Turn on the sprinklers when you go. Today, those tee times are like $300 a head. That's inflation. It's everywhere you go. Inflation. Now, some inflation like gas, you understand. We're constricting supply. Some inflation is just like beef. Okay, we have the fewest amount of cows, but beef is now $7. Ground beef is $7 a pound, and no wonder. I'm wondering, like, how long can I afford this lifestyle? Like, how long can I afford these inputs? I wouldn't want to buy a house right now either. Anyway, I'm gonna cut my rant off. I could keep going, but you get the gist. David, I'd love to get your point of view, and McKenna, yours.
McKenna, I think we just had an official Ron's rant. When we were first talking about doing this show, we're like, all right, how do we want to break it up into different segments? And we're going to do From the Gut from Dave, and then our main topics, and then a Ron's rant. We just officially heard a Ron's rant right there. But one thing that you said that stuck out to me, you were like, man, just everyone lies to you and all the time and everywhere. I was like, man, Ron, you got to surround yourself with more trustworthy people. I'm just kidding. But no, it does make me think about just kind of corporate trust. We've all had friends or family that have been through divorces because of infidelity or whatever. When trust is broken, and it's very hard to regain that trust and heal and so on. But I think about that with corporate trust as well. Once that trust has been broken, I think of that, and in marriages when stuff goes sideways, that how hard it is for a company to earn that trust back from their customers, from the public opinion, and so on. Because in my years of leading marketing, it's been a pretty wide umbrella, especially at some companies where PR and communications has fallen under that, and I've had to lead crisis management things before, and I think about how hard that trust is to build. But it's even harder to build that back once you've broken that trust. And uh, I'm not sure if Hershey is quite there yet, but they're on their way.
Definitely. And David, I'm not going to get on this negative cynicism, but open up a bag of chips. What is there? The bag has a quarter percent full of potato chips. The rest is air. Open up a bag of cereal. I mean, it's amazing how often we're deceived, right? And it's constant. And so what happens? We become cynics. We're really cynical. I'll tell you what. I'll give you an example. I've been doing a bunch of yard work here lately, and I've been trying to replace the hoses in my house. I'm trying to buy a no kink hose. I am on my fourth brand of trying to get a hose that doesn't kink. The fourth one, all of them guaranteed not to kink. Baloney, right? I could keep going. I don't know why I'm in this mood, but I'm gonna stop. McKenna, what's your thoughts? I know I'm running long.
I think, especially from the perspective of my generation, I feel like my generation has an innate distrust for large corporations. And I feel like this is kind of the perfect example of it. Of like, even if it's something as innocuous as chocolate, they're just lying. And so I think that's kind of why there's the perspective of so many people in my generation don't trust mortgage lenders, or they think that they're going to get screwed over in buying a house, because I know that that was a statistic that y'all have mentioned a few times. And I think because of that innate distrust that we have, that we think that we're going to get screwed over by any and every company that we come across, and sometimes it's fair and sometimes it's not.
Yeah, and you're right to bring up that statistic, that from the first Home IQ study that showed only 1 in 6 millennials actually believe that the loan officer or real estate professional is working in their best interest or is telling them the truth. That's a problem. But you know what? That's because that's what they face everywhere. And in the same vein as I don't know how many instances of the emperor has no clothes that we have to look at every day. Like, oh, the war's over. Oh, that's interesting. You just bombed 25 more places today. I'm not so sure the war's over. I mean, it's like, ignore your eyes. Don't. It's the craziest thing. And so I don't know. But as a loan officer, if you could pierce that and gain trust, real trust, you probably have an advantage given the world we live in.
Ron, we've got another comment from your brother that says that we should do
Mike,
an
you're on next
entire
week.
Yeah, we should do an entire episode on tipflation. I'm actually not sure if that could be an entire episode or even a topic, because I've seen those posts on social media, and when you read through the comments on it, 99% of people all agree that it's absolutely out of control. And most people have the perspective, when you go into a restaurant, but you go down like a Chipotle, where you go down the queue and you don't have a waitress or any of that stuff, but they flip that screen around and you're like, how much tip do you want? You're like, none. If I had a waitress, that's different. We have a favorite restaurant of ours. It's a Mexican restaurant, and we have had the same waitress, and it could be me, my wife, my daughter, my mom. She knows exactly what we order. That's kind of sad that we order pretty much the same thing every single time, but she knows what she wants. She was like, do you want this or that? And it's always like one of two things. I tip her usually about 40%, sometimes 50%. But these other places like a Chipotle or somewhere where you're just ordering at the counter, I think most people, we just added a new topic based off
Yeah.
Mike's suggestion. But I think most people have the same perspective that I think I do.
I think the bigger question is, how does this whole tip inflation impact your behavior? Like, do you avoid going to restaurants because you don't want to pay the tip?
Mm,
Or do you
no,
make coffee at home so you don't have to face the tip at Starbucks? My guess is it actually impacts consumer behavior quite a bit. It impacts mine. I cook at home a lot more,
that's
so I
it.
don't have to go worry about the tip.
I don't mind paying for a tip if it does factor into the equation. I'm like, we don't need to spend $200 on a meal. We can just eat right here. But it doesn't really factor into me, whether we go out to eat or not. It might factor in where we go. I don't know what I'm saying. Forget it.
It totally impacts me. I don't want the stress of having to go out. It makes me mad at the tip. But to our caller, Mike, to your question, the bigger question, the most interesting comparison is, let's say meals have gone from, going out to dinner has gone from $50 to $100, and so the tip now goes from $10 to $20, right? But how's that different than your 1% commission? I'm not saying you're on a 1% commission, but right, homes have gone from 200,000 to 500,000. I haven't seen loan officers cut their commission rate, and
Yeah.
so in states with a lot of inflation like California, you benefit from that. And I'm not saying that's right or wrong. Now, I'm guessing, Mike, you're not saying just as a percentage of the bill. You're saying about the prevalence of everybody wanting a tip.
Right.
You go to the dry cleaners, they literally turn their little screen around and go, "Hey, would you like the tip?" I'm like, "Hey, how would you like me to go someplace
Really?
else?" But but anyway, maybe we'll have this as a future topic. We'll have Mike on, and
Yeah.
he could lead this topic.
Yeah. All right. Let's jump into our tech tip of the week. McKenna, run that bumper. Ron, what do we
All
got
right,
this week?
so I love this. I love this tech tip of the week. Here's the deal. There's a recent study, and it's a pretty exhaustive study, by the way, on what gets you the best results in AI? If you're nice to AI, do you get a better result? If you're rude, do you get a better result? And the answer was people that are angry that yell at AI actually get better results. And just to let you put a statistic to it, is if you're very polite, the AI is accurate about 80% of the time. But if you're a rude jerk, it's right about 85% of the time. And so it's completely counterintuitive. And the researchers on this, and by the way, this was a deep academic study. If you were to look at the paper, it's like 200 pages, has all sorts of charts and stuff on it, And if you, the researchers you could tell had a bias. I really hope that nice people win, but it was the a-holes that won. And this is like the second or third time that they've run this type of study and had the same results. And so then they can try to go, well, gosh, why are rude people, why do they get better results? And so David McKenna, I know I put this to you earlier. Why do angry people get better results with their AI?
So we've talked about this before, and I think you and McKenna had the same perspective that you're like, I don't want to be rude to my AI because it might kind of, kill me in the future. I'm a little bit different. I think the question we've asked ourselves before is how many times have you cursed at your AI? And I'm always a guilty one, like many times. And I actually, although I didn't curse at it the other day, I was like, are you freaking kidding me? I keep on giving you these instructions and you keep on giving me this slop. How can help me help you? The whole Jerry Maguire thing. But I tend to kind of be a little bit more, not necessarily rude, but like kind of pissed off at my AI, but it could be my fault,
McKenna?
I mean, I very rarely use AI, but on the off chance that I do, I'm very polite. It's
Although
not.
you're at a disadvantage because you typically use sailor language in your daily communication. So that could
I can be professional. I can be polite. I just choose not to with y'all.
We should go live one week 10 minutes before we typically do when we're still doing show prep, and our audience can see McKenna's true self.
Yeah, she's awesome that way. Okay, so I agree. Renee Rodriguez really introduced me to artificial intelligence in general, and his stand is, look, I'm always super polite to it in case it takes over and rules the world. I want to remember that I was nice to it, and so I've always adopted that. Well, that's kind of my natural way. But here's what the analysts think. These people that did this paper, they're like, the reason why AI performs better when people are angry, because somebody that's super pissed off is direct and succinct. Like, hey, you bleepity bleepity bleepy, you didn't do what I want. This is what I wanted. Bleepity bleep. And so it's easy to understand. Versus some of this nice is like, hey, AI, Chad, are you having a good day? I just got to tell you, I so appreciate you. And I really think we're building something great here. And I don't think I could be who I could be if it wasn't for you. But anyway, hey, let me ask you, what do you think the weather's going to be like next week when I'm in Seattle? Like, it has to go through a whole bunch of words to figure out what the hell you just said. Or if you said, effing Chad, you just effing screwed this up. I asked you to give me the number, right? And it goes, oh, I understand that. Okay. And so that's why they think you get a better, more accurate answer. That's what the analysts think.
Don't be scared, Ron.
Yeah.
Uncensor yourself. Let's hear it.
No,
All right.
that was
So
me.
we started,
I know.
we went long. We had technical difficulties. I'm out of beer. Let's wrap this thing up, man.
All right. So that's a wrap for us. Thanks for joining. Mike Stowers, if you're still watching, thanks so much for all the comments. I love it. We love it. It actually helps with the algorithm and all that kind of stuff. So I don't want just comments just for the sake of comments, but actually maybe I do. It helps the algorithm. It helps engagement, all that kind of stuff. Go onto that site, littlenessie.com/store. I'm sorry for just pointing. That's a no-no typically. So my apologies, but go onto littlenessie.com/store. Mike Stowers, pick your favorite t-shirt, pick your top 3 t-shirts. I don't care. Send me your size and I'll get your address from your brother. So if you've joined us, we appreciate it. we have fun every Thursday. Ron and I put a good amount of work into what, well, not Ron and I. Ron puts a lot of work into what we're going to talk about every week. But Ron and I chat every single day, and it typically goes like this. It's just fun back and forth. So if you've joined us, thank you. We appreciate it. We'll end with a cheers. We start with a cheers, so we'll end with a cheers. Happy Thursday. Have a great weekend. We'll see you next Thursday. Take care.
Cheers.